Hello, good to see you again. And thank you for lots of lovely phone calls and comments, all received from various quarters and all these ones. I'm never terribly sure whether it's a WhatsApp or a messenger, or so I hope I don't miss responding to you. But it's been lovely to get that feeling that you really enjoyed that first one. And let's hope you'll continue to enjoy them. From my point of view, it was actually really useful. I mean, Rosie's bracelet, I'd forgotten about Rosie's bracelet. Oh, it's going to be a fairly integral part in the identification of Prune and his background, perhaps, maybe not. We don't know if he's Mashono, we don't know if he's Ndebele. He's being brought up as Ndebele boy. Anyway, this is part of the fun of historical fiction. You make sure the history is right, that exactly what was happening at that time, and then the fiction kind of does its own thing. So here we go. This is to introduce the three characters. Four characters. One of them was actually in Bechuanaland at this time because his great grandfather, about whom we hear a great deal later on, had just died. So this is introducing Prune and Jabu and Carol. Hope you enjoy it. When they were going to make mud oxen, Prune got up kuseni early in the morning before the sun shone. He would sit in his best sandy place on the much trampled road between the clinic and Carol's house. He was looking for antlions, waiting to find their traps. And the way he could find them was by seeing little squirts of sand being thrown up round a pointy hole. When the squirts stopped, the trap was ready. Everything would go still. Prune lay on his stomach, watching, only his eyes moving like a chameleon. Watching. They were itchy from watching. Then a fast ant came running, not looking, and zoop, into the hole. It tried to get out, but the antlion shot up wet sand and little stones that it didn't want, and the ant fell and fell again. It struggled and struggled to escape. Then it fell too deep. It was caught and pulled under the sand with long claws. Prune knew the antlion would suck the ant's juices dry. He also knew, because the ant couldn't escape, that the red ant heap was just right for the antlion. If it was just right for the antlion, it was just right for him to make good mud, to make izinkomo. He stood up. But he couldn't quite leave the antlion, not just yet. He broke off a twig from the flat-topped thorn tree just behind it. Squatting on his heels, he waited and waited, still as a stone, taut ankle ligaments and tendons trained to hold him in the time-honored position of his grandfathers until the sand stopped moving. Then he plunged his twig into the side of the hole, and his hours of practice paid off as the antlion was flicked out of the trap. He yelled in triumph, jumping with delight to see the little insect flying through the air. He watched it land and immediately start to burrow again. That was a hungry antlion. But Prune had waited too long. He had to move fast. Breaking off pieces of anthill to fill his tin bucket, he watched the sun as it climbed inexorably up through the thorn bush. He filled another bucket with water so he could half walk, half run to the big fig in Carol's garden and reach it before its shade reached the mahoba tree, or to be too hot for good mud to make the animals. Breathless, he flopped down cross-legged on the grass in the densest bit of shade, then poured water with the accustomed expertise of regular practice from one tin basin into the dry ant heap in the other, moving, kneading, mixing it to make it right. He rubbed and he stretched it, and he rubbed and he stretched. Then he cupped his hand to pick up more water. He stretched it again. Then he smoothed it out on the stone to about 1 inch thick. He stretched out his fingers and thumb tight together and placed his hand on the mud. A careful cut of the mud with a piece of tin bucket up round the shape of his hand would make 1 izinkomo. Prune picked up the mud shape, then held it tight at the bottom so it stood up in the air when the top flopped down before you could say izinkomo, izinkomo, izinkomo. It was just right. Then quickly, he wrapped each piece in pawpaw leaves, piling mud packs into 2 heaps, one for Jabu, one for Carol. No power for timber today, because he was in Bechuanaland. Jabu and Carol made many cattle, so they were quick. He would have to work fast in order to have enough mud. Salibonani Prun. Jabu had walked from the school where his father was a teacher and had a real teacher's house made of bricks. It was like Prun's house with Sister McLeod, but bigger. Yebo Linjan. It was important to greet each other in the right way. Prune stood up, touching cupped hands together in greeting. Carol came running out of her house. Her house was brick too, but even bigger. A veranda ran right round the house, and there was a garden with flowers at the front and vegetables at the back. One day, thought Prune, I will have flowers in my garden. Then I will be rich. Hi, guys. Oh, good. That's lots of mud you've made. Prune was pleased. As he watched the making of bulls and cows, he started thinking. Some days he did things right. Mostly, he did things wrong. When the shade moved, he had to move, or the mud would get dry. Sometimes he was too slow and would forget to move, because he thought of other things all the time, like having flowers in your garden. Then when he was too long in the shade, the mud was too wet. When the mud was too wet, it would make a very hard day's work. Prune, Waza, come here. Prune shuffled up on his 4-year-old knees and offered Jabu more mud, clapping his hands together, straight fingers and thumbs touching. He looked Jabu in the eye, because Jabu was the first grandson of an important chief, so it was important too, even when he was his friend. Why can't I make bulls? Carol asked. I know, Jabulani replied, disgust contorting his 4-year-old face. I only make the goatsen and the bulls. They are my mali, my money. I can look after my tribe. Girls don't need mali. Carol pouted. Aren't I your tribe? I know you are white. You have no tribe. But I do, she pouted. Mom and Dad and Tim and my cousins. I gonna not a tribe. Cousins like izinkomo, part of family. Jabu stood up, chin in the air, a miniature of his straight-backed father. Tribe is zonke, everything, he gestured. We make izinkomo for my tribe, for my chief, for my lobola, paying for a bride. Boys work for the tribe to feed mombis and zinkomo to grow more fat. Don't speak, Cinderella Jabu, I don't understand. You must learn. Jabu turned away. Prune, where's that? Jabu, you are shouting at Prune all the time today. Carol said, why can't he make cows with us? He is Bandlulula, he is rejected, illegitimate, Jabu muttered. Carol didn't understand, but she knew it was not a good thing to be. We need thorns for the crow. Prune sighed, looked at Carol quickly, then backed away to the edge of the shade. He jumped up and ran to fetch thorns. Carol hated thorns. The long jabbing needles scratched and stabbed and made her bleed. It was funny, though, how Jabu's blood was the same color as hers. But his skin was dark, shiny brown. Hers was pale white, but went very red in the sun. Then she'd cry with soreness and blisters. Mum made her wear her hated hat, but she took it off in the shade of the fig tree. Jabu and Prune didn't wear hats and didn't get sunburned, even when they sat in the sun for ages. Carol and Jabu were twins, born the same day. But they weren't the same. She thought twins were always the same. That was funny too. They kept many cows and calves in one kraal to keep them safe from lion and leopard. Another kraal was for oxen with long bent horns. and another one for humpy bulls with big heads. Carol took a parcel of mud and unwrapped the pawpaw leaves. She rubbed it till it was all in one piece, then shaped it into a fat red sausage. Then quick, pinching for the throat and cheekbones, smoothed the back for a long neck, front legs, back legs, tail, then up to the head to make 2 long horns, not too long because these were just cows, and very carefully under the stomach to make teats, because they always broke first. Last of all, fat noses and little fingernails made nose holes and a dent for the eyes. If you did it carefully, every cow was different. Some had sweet faces. Some were very bossy. "Are you having drumming in your village tonight, Jabu?" asked Carol. "There's always drumming in Jabu's village," Prune teased. "I think Tokolosh is coming to you tonight." "Don't joke about Tokolosh." "Look," Carol whispered, pointing. "There's one." She'd seen a hare hopping into the bush behind them. She stood up and it leapt out, splashing wildly through Prune's poured out water. Prune and Jabu fled in different directions, yelling. The cattle scattered. Carol was frightened because they were scared, so she ran away too. "Just joking," she tried to laugh as she walked uncertainly back. Jabu was very cross. "Don't ever do that again. Never, never, never lie about Tokolosh." "Sorry, Jabu." "Sorry, Prune. The cattle are broken. Look, there are too many broken for my bullfight." Jabu was downcast. As he picked them up, he slowly said the names of each animal that was broken. Amatambo, Uomili, Isibunumkulu. He collected the pieces and gently put them in a calabash. Carol started to name some of her broken cows too. Sipongile, Numvula, Tandiwe. "Those are girls' names, not names for cattle," Jabu said scornfully. "Names must tell the story like this. Amatambo, he has big bones. Uomili is thirsty because his mud was too dry and he cracked. And this one," he picked up a very fat bull, "Isibununkuru has a big bottom." Sadly and carefully, they put the unbroken cows, calves, and bulls that still needed to dry into their crawls for the night, trying not to get jabbed by the thorns. Then they made a stick roof and softly laid pretend mealie stalks on top of it. In the night, the animals would pull down stalks to eat them. Then the cattle would make manure, and the next day the manure would have to be cleaned out and put on the fields to grow more mealies to feed the family. Even though these were pretend cattle and pretend mealie stalks, Jabu would not leave till the new cattle were all in the kraal. The thorn gate was shut and mealie stalks were on the roof. He said it was an important lesson he had learned from his father, and the others must learn it too. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks again to the Dando family for that lovely photograph. It absolutely made my day getting hold of that and being able to use it for today. See you next week.